Happy to see you all. Hello, who's in the center today? Oh, you're still prostrating. Happy to see you. Two of you.
Yes, Maria
And
is in the center, and the second person I don't know yet.
I can't
happy
see
to see you all. Tara, Lars.
Yes, hello,
everybody.
hello.
Wonderful. Happy to see you all. Okay, precious ones. So we're going to continue our little discussion about how to get bodhicitta, this outrageous state of mind, this shocking state of mind that seems impossible initially, but let's look at the logic of it. And so first, as always, we're going to offer the contents of the universe to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. Okay, you're going to have me saying the words, but we try and imagine the words are coming from the Buddha channeling through my dumb Australian mouth, okay? Hope there are some blessings. So we're requesting the teachings, all right?
Sashi perki meto Tramri Ratninji Nihide Gyan Padi Sangye Shingu Mehche Wagi Roku Nanda Shila Chepaksho Jetsu Lama Dam Takenam Keche Kikala Kehense Churchin Tree Gita Sampe Duke Mala Zabye Chuki Chapa Vatu So Iram Guru Ratna Mandalakami Chayami.
So imagine Buddha very happily receives our offering. And so now, as always, we're going to state two things. First is we remind ourselves of our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings, kind of programming our mind with this wish. And then secondly, this marvelous aspiration, which in fact is bodhicitta, the most expansive goal we can have is to achieve Buddhahood. And that's the statement of bodhicitta. Listen, I'm going to listen to these teachings so that finally when I become a Buddha, I'll be able to benefit sentient beings. That's the idea. It's kind of you're putting that seed in your mind, you know. This becomes the motive for listening to these teachings. Sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chernyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shok sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chernyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shok. And the third time in English, I'll add a few extra words. So we're saying, until we are enlightened, we're going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then by the virtuous karma we create by listening to these teachings, may they ripen in the future as our Buddhahood. And then we can be of benefit to others. And that's it. Thank you so much, Lars. Thank you, Tara. So last week, what I tried to do is, and this is the crucial piece to get, you know, to give the background, to give the context, to give the framework. And like I say, this is always hard for us for some reason, you know. This is, in fact, if you look at this as a kind of it's like as His Holiness says, it's like a course of study. It's like going to college, you know. First you do junior school, then you do high school, then you do university. Well, this is university. And this sounds curious to us because one of the first things that we like about, say, spiritual teachings is it's about love and compassion. But this is actually more advanced. And I tried to explain this. All the time we talk about it, I tried to explain it. And last week, very particularly, I tried to explain it. That the context here has to be the work you've done earlier in junior school and high school. It's sort of obvious if you're studying physics or music. You can't just leap into university level music. You need the background. You can't just leap into, you know, university level physics. You have to have the background of junior school and high school. In any other body of knowledge, we get it completely. But as soon as it comes to spiritual, then we're not so sure. And certainly if it's some kind of esoteric teachings, like in Tantra, we kind of get, or maybe that's advanced. But to think that bodhicitta or compassion necessarily is more advanced is a very curious idea to us. And the reasoning, as we discussed last week, is because the level of compassion and love that Buddha is saying that we can accomplish is way more radical than we ever assume in our ordinary daily life. In our daily life and our models of the mind, our neuroscience, our systems, our world, the assumption of love and compassion is very narrow because it's based upon love and compassion for your beloveds, who are the objects of your attachment. By definition, you don't try to have love and compassion for the mean, ugly ones. I mean, it's the exact opposite. And then 99.9% of the rest of the world, all the strangers, there's no thought of developing love and compassion for them. This all seems rather exhausting, but this is the point here. This is the point here in the compassion wing. So it's more radical. So, you know, as Pabonka Rinpoche says, to do this level of practice, you need to be a suitable vessel. And what's a suitable vessel for advanced physics? A person who's done junior school and high school. What's a suitable vessel for developing this level of love and compassion and therefore bodhicitta? A person who's done the wisdom wing, junior school and high school. And what does that mean? First level, you have to understand karma. Understand that you do not want future suffering. It's like compassion for yourself. The wisdom ring is like compassion for yourself. You learn the nuts and bolts of Buddha's teachings about karma and the mind and use these as your tools to help you stop future suffering. Because with the view of karma, we realize that we are the creator of ourselves. Big surprise to us. So all the first level of practice is about yourself. We are the beneficiaries. It's all the practice of the different levels of ethics and morality in Buddhism, so-called ethics or morality, the practices of developing good ethics. The very first level of good ethics, which is junior school and high school, is the ethics of refraining from harming. This is really huge to understand. This is the background. So the main purpose behind, the energy behind the teachings on karma and understanding your own mind is to understand that you being the creator of your future self, the very first thing you want to stop doing is creating future suffering. If you flip that over, it means creating your future happiness. The emphasis is on stopping creating future suffering, because that points to the practices of not killing and not stealing and not lying. And then you get to high school and of not being attached and not being angry and not being jealous. So that's focused on refraining from the negativities, because they are what cause our future suffering. The flip side is that's what brings your future happiness. So the first and second scopes of the Lam Rim, junior school and high school, the wisdom wing, you are the beneficiary, you are the focal point. There's no discussion about love and compassion yet. This is now where we're at here. On the basis of some success at the level of the wisdom wing, we now refer all of those teachings now to others. We start to realize we are all in the same boat. We all create our own suffering. We all can create our own happiness. And on that basis, we develop love and compassion for sentient beings, all of them. The logic is clear, but without studying the earlier stuff and understanding it, the logic is not clear. It just sounds insane. So the goal, the end result, the goal of junior school is to at least refrain from harming with your body and speech, live in vows and purify, so that at the very least, when you die, you get another decent human rebirth. And in this life, you become a subdued, content, fulfilled person. Who doesn't want that? Then you increase that level of work in the high school, the next level, and now you have the space to look deeply into the mind, which is the source of the problem. And then by lessening your neuroses and delusions, you become even more fulfilled, even more content. And you'll even be able to get the hell out of samsara altogether, because you're giving up attachment. Now on the compassion wing, having subdued your body, speech, and mind to some degree, having at least understood intellectually, logically, the teachings of karma, the teachings about the mind, this is the nuts and bolts of Buddha's view. You now, start to open your eyes and go, oh my God, we're all in the same boat. Look at sentient beings. And you start to want to now continue to work on your mind. That never stops. But the reference point now shifts from stopping you from future suffering to helping you help others. And it's logical. If you're overwhelmed by your own misery, your own hopelessness, your own fears, your own jealousy and depression, you can't see past your own nose. You don't even, any thought of compassion almost doesn't exist. It's like, excuse me, I'm suffering. What about me? Because we're so overwhelmed by our misery. And the compassion we do have is usually sentimental, based on attachment. So it's unstable, as Lama Zopa says. So the more we understand this framework, the more this kind of makes sense. So, okay, there are different methods, and in the course notes, who gave these teachings this time? Let's have a look. These course notes by Venerable K. Minor, she goes into detail. So in the methods of developing bodhicitta, chapter 3, page 29 in the tablet version. In the tablet version, methods for developing bodhicitta. So there are a number of methods for developing bodhicitta: the sevenfold cause and effect method, equalizing and exchanging self for others, and the combined method that pulls the two together in 11 steps. There's also a series of teachings and practices within Mahayana called mind training, not mind or brainwashing, by the way. So never mind, there are different methods. So the one I want to go through is the 11, the combination of these two systems. And this is one that Pabonka Rinpoche goes through in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So that's the one I want to go through. So what I might do is send you an extra little document. We'll talk about it now, then Tara can put it we can do it now, actually. Let me see if I can find it for you.
Sure.
No, I can't. I have to do it now. I can't do it now. But it's a very brief summary, in my words, really brief, of the 11 different points. And it's a combination of these two systems. So the starting one, and we've done this teaching quite a bit, you will recognize it. The first one, so, okay, sorry. The essence of the goal of the wisdom wing, which is junior school and high school, is to give up suffering and its causes. Flip it over to achieve some degree of one's own happiness. Now, the next goal is to accomplish bodhicitta. The goal is the bodhicitta, and we're going to go through the methods. The goal, the culmination of this next level of practice is the accomplishment of bodhicitta. So again, let's remind ourselves what that word refers to. It's not an equivalent of love and compassion. It's the culmination of levels of love and compassion, So the essence of all the virtuous states of mind. In the first level, we're trying to focus on the non-virtuous actions and the non-virtuous delusions and try to subdue them because they cause us suffering. So here, we're now emphasizing the development of the virtues, the development of the positive qualities. So the essence of all of these, you could say, are love and compassion. Often in spiritual teachings, people talk about love being everything, and yeah, Buddha would agree. But he adds this other component. This particular one in the Mahayana, the emphasis is on the development of compassion. So love, the definition is, it's a thought. Everything starts being a concept that thinks, may you be happy. That when you see someone happy, you delight in their happiness. You want a person to be happy. May you be happy. That's the meaning of love. Now, right now, of course, we conflate it with attachment. And when you see your divine baby whom you're attached to, or your divine boyfriend whom you're attached to, of course you want them to be happy, but we think they're the same thing. But let's look into this and how they're utterly different. So love is the delight in someone's happiness and the wish they be happy. Then compassion takes the suffering as your focal point, and you see suffering and you think, oh my God, look at that suffering. I wish you did not suffer. I do not want you to suffer. May you not suffer. That's compassion, the thought. You see suffering or you think of it and you don't want it for someone. So renunciation is like you don't want your own suffering and now you don't want others to suffer. It's compassion. So you can say all the other virtuous states of mind kind of come into these, they're involved in these. They assume these, they're assumed in these. So the completion of these in these 11 techniques, and we mentioned this briefly last week, and I'll say it again, that these two go to an extra level of compassion. And you could argue an extra level of love as well, but it's called Mahakaruna, great compassion. And this is the unique characteristic of the compassion of the Bodhisattva path. This brave attitude, as His Holiness used to call universal compassion. It's this powerful attitude that not only when you see suffering do you think, oh my God, look at that suffering. I wish it didn't happen. You have empathy, in other words. In Buddhism, generally, empathy and compassion are equivalent. I think in modern psychology, they have different definitions. Then the next one is the brave one, the unique one of the Bodhisattva. And you've got to cultivate this. It says, what can I do to help? What can I do to take away the suffering? You could argue great love as well. What can I do to make you happy? This is where you really put your money where your mouth is. This is where you really do the job of committing that I will do it. This is the unique one of the bodhisattva. This does necessarily not come naturally. For your own baby and for your pussycat, yes, because you're attached to them. But this one is really powerful. It's easy to be overwhelmed by compassion for somebody, but to then think, what can I do? This is so profound, you know, this is so huge. The difference is unbelievable. This is what characterizes the bodhisattva path, you know, this brave attitude of the bodhisattva. And as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, that you even have this courageous attitude that if I had to do it on my own, by myself alone, I will do it. This brave attitude. When you understand this psychologically, it's a very powerful attitude, you know. So there's a really interesting discussion here. Let's look at the combination. Let's compare. Let's look at the two goals in Buddhism. If you graduate at high school, if you graduate from the wisdom wing, that's the Theravadan path. That's the Hinayana path. If you studied in Burma or Thailand, that is the goal, the achievement of your own liberation from suffering and its causes. That's the framework of the Four Noble Truths. And that's your nirvana, your cessation of suffering and its causes. You achieve liberation, freedom from suffering and its causes. In other words, that's the completed wisdom wing. Then you've got the compassion wing, which is on the Mahayana path. So then you don't graduate there, you continue on to the university level, and you now cultivate this outrageous levels of love and compassion. You enhance love and compassion to this extraordinary degree, and they culminate in this outrageous view called bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, technically awakening thought or awakening mind. You know, I mean, I don't know what we just get used to using the term, the Sanskrit bodhicitta, and then you give it, and once you know the meaning, like any foreign word, you can give them. We've got lots of foreign words in English, haven't we? But they've become our own words, haven't they? I mean, look at all our Greek words, you know, we love Greek. As soon as it becomes intellectual or fancy, we give it a Greek name. As soon as it's a mental illness, we give it a Greek name. It's hilarious. Anyway, here, let's look at the difference between the love and compassion you would naturally have if you've accomplished your own nirvana, and the love and compassion that you proactively enhance and develop on the compassion wing. This is the major difference between the two goals, the two paths. So think about it. The emphasis, like I said before, the emphasis on the wisdom wing is emphasis upon don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't be angry, don't be jealous, don't be depressed, don't be attached. It's on the emphasis on ridding the mind of the neuroses. But if obviously, like you say, like I said, if you flip it over, it goes without saying that this is a method for getting you to be happy. We have to remember that because it sounds depressing to us, you know. But I want to be happy. Well, this is Buddha's method. Give up anger, give up jealousy, give up depression, then you'll get happy. It's hard for us to hear that, because we just hear it as punitive. We hear it as someone saying, don't do that, otherwise you're naughty. You know, we hear it as punishment and reward, that kind of model, which is not meant to be at all. So the point is this, if you think about it, if you continue to control your body and speech, you give up harming others, you live in vows, you purify your mind, you go to high school, you lessen attachment, you lessen the other neuroses, you eventually get shamatha, you eventually realize emptiness, and you cut the root delusion, and you eventually perfect your mind. And then at one point or other, in one life or other, you will have actually achieved this nirvana, this liberation. So when you die at the end of that life, you are finished. You don't come back. Now, what's interesting in the Theravadan path, they actually say your mind ceases completely. But as His Holiness says, we Mahayanas have a problem with that. That's not the Mahayana interpretation at all. Your delusions have ceased, not your mind. That's nihilistic. Your delusions have ceased. You've cut the root of suffering. And then you enter into this state of subtle mental bliss for eons. That's the meaning of liberation. Now, let's look at that kind of mind. It says a mind that's free of anger. It says a mind that's free of attachment. It says a mind that's free of delusions. But flip it over. If you have less attachment and less anger and less jealousy, even just ordinarily in your daily life, you obviously have more patience and more love and more kindness. They are automatically growing, aren't they? It's a natural process that as you get less angry, you become more patient. As you get less jealous, you become more rejoicing. As you get less attached, you become more fulfilled. It's sort of obvious. It doesn't state it like that. But if you analyze it, it is that. That's very encouraging. So if you're going to think of a person who has achieved their own nirvana, you can't even conceive of this person. Their unbelievable levels of love and compassion. It's absolutely natural that they would have that. There's no question about that. They're utterly, and they're blissful. This is the bonus, you know. The Buddhist view is that happiness, joy, bliss are the natural result of lessening your neuroses. This is so clear. We should be joyful about even hearing this, you know. So this person who's achieved nirvana has unbelievable loves of empathy and compassion and kindness and love. And how could they not have? Because they have cut the root of the separate I. They no longer have this separate neurotic sense of a fearful I that's gone. They must be an astonishing person, unbelievably joyful, unbelievably compassionate, unbelievably loving. There's no question about it. But now let's look at the difference. So that person on this path, their goal, life after life, is the achievement of their cessation of suffering and its causes. Their goal is to achieve nirvana. Their goal is to achieve the state of mind such that they don't need to come back into samsaric bodies. That's their goal, life after life. So as they progress, that's their motivation. Nothing wrong. It's an amazing motivation to want to get rid of suffering. We need to have this to motivate, to get the hell out of suffering. Got to have energy and enthusiasm for it. So their goal is that. And by the time they achieve it in that particular life, whatever life it is, when they've accomplished all of that, then when they come back, when they die, so in that life and before that, their love and compassion are huge. They're astonishing people. But listen to this, because their goal has been to get out of samsara and not come back, when they die, that goal overrides their love and compassion, and their bliss, which is tremendous, and their goal of I must get out of samsara override the love and compassion, and they don't come back. Now, what about the bodhisattva path? A person on the bodhisattva path goes through the exact same stages of practice. These are the practices that are shared by all people on the Buddhist path. If you know, some of you can graduate at junior school and at least be a good person and then achieve a decent rebirth. That's the Christian goal, to go to heaven, which is like staying, is still in samsara. Then at least you don't fall into the lower realms. The next goal is the one of nirvana. You don't come back at all. But the next goal is you want to become a Buddha. So what's the difference between the love and compassion on the bodhisattva path and the love and compassion on the Theravadan path, on the Hinayana path? This is not sectarian, it's just logical Buddhist teachings, you know? And this is where it's incomparable, unable to be compared. When you hear Lama Zopa talk about the qualities of the love and compassion of the bodhisattva, it's like inconceivable. So the person whose goal is Buddhahood, you go through the exact same stages as the Hinayana practitioner. You go through the first stages to stop rebirth, suffering rebirth. You go to the next stage, you get renunciation, and then you develop this incredible renunciation. You develop this joy and fulfillment, and you stop harming and stop killing and stop lying, stop stealing. You stop anger, stop jealousy, stop attachment. You become more joyful, more blissful, more radiant, more amazing, more compassionate, more loving. No question. But your goal is Buddhahood. So you could even get to the point the same as a Hinayana practitioner and achieve your nirvana. You could even do that. But and you don't need to come back. But at the end of that life for you, your love and compassion override your bliss, and you will happily come back, even though you don't need to. That's the unique characteristic of the compassion that is the one called great compassion. It will be, I will do it. I will work. This is bodhicitta now. You have bodhicitta. Bodhicitta has two parts. And it's the culmination of this great compassion. And bodhicitta is the thought, there's this paradigm shift now when you've got the bodhicitta. We're going to go through these 11 points to get it. When you've got that bodhicitta, when it kicks in for the first time, not just a moment of it, but a genuine realization. The various criteria. One is there's no longer the thought of I. You know you're I, you're not stupid. But there's no longer the thought of the usual neurotic fear-based I. And there's no longer the thought of getting anything for this I. You could argue it's because you're so blissfully you're so blissfully fulfilled, but you're so full of this incredible love and compassion. Only others are in your mind every millisecond. Now, this is inconceivable, even just that in our culture. It sounds like mental illness, you know. There's no reference point for this in our materialist psychological models. Maybe Christianity, yes, the great saints, that's what they're like. So the first part of bodhicitta is only to want to benefit others. Whoever's in front of you, the ant, the dog, the pedophile, whoever, your job is to help them in whatever way, based on your wisdom. The other aspect, the long-term part of bodhicitta is this long-term goal, this fierce determination, fierce intentional determination based upon unbelievable love, unbelievable compassion for all sentient beings, that I will never give up one life after another. And you're not just floating along crossing your fingers, you're proactively now, after you've got the bodhicitta, you're now doing the 6 perfections in your life after life, you're becoming a Buddha. So this is your long-term goal. You have this, as His Holiness says, bodhisattvas think in terms of eons. So then if you practice Tantra, then you want to become Buddha as quickly as possible, because then you're qualified to do the job of being a Buddha and manifesting in countless bodies throughout countless universes for the sake of countless sentient beings for countless eons. That's the difference between the love and compassion of the bodhisattva path and the love and compassion of the Hinayana path. I mean, not criticizing the love and compassion of the Hinayana, it's inconceivable in normal worldly terms. But if you compare with the levels of compassion and wisdom and the power of the bodhisattva, it's inconceivable. And the key of it is this great compassion. What can I do? It gives you the courage, you know. Okay, now let's go through the 11 techniques. We'll do that between now and the last class. How many classes more? We've got 2 more, right? Okay, we'll go through these 11 techniques. And again, these 11 techniques, they're like steps on a path. They're not just kind of all of equal status. The first one naturally leads to the second leads to the third leads to the fourth. It's this gradual analytical thinking process where you're breaking down the barriers between self and other, you know, these 11 techniques. And the culmination, the 11th, is bodhicitta. And this is a combination, as Kay just says, between the 2 techniques called the 6 causes, 1 effect, and the one called exchanging self for others. But before I continue now, are there any questions based on what I've just said, the last 30 minutes? That's okay, there aren't. It's all right. Excuse me for a second, please. So this first one is the development of equanimity. We've talked about this a lot. So this will be the topic today. And think of it, it's the first step in these 11 steps that culminate in bodhicitta. It's like each one leads to the next. They grow upon each other. They're logically connected. They're incremental. First you do this, then you do this, then you do that. And they each grows into the next one. They're interdependently connected. Okay. So equanimity is outrageous enough. And it's the first of the 11, okay? Equanimity, what is it? It's this heartfelt, is my definition, my words. It's when you've got it, when you've accomplished it. And the difference here is, you know, when we think of doing a meditation in love and compassion, we think of it as sort of like an experience. You know, oh, I had a lovely meditation today. I had tears in my eyes for sentient beings. That's very nice. I'm happy for you. But if you can't do it every time, then you haven't accomplished it. It's like you go to the piano, you've got some feeling for music and you twinkle around and play some nice notes and a lovely sound comes out. And I'll say to you, oh, that's really lovely. Please play it again. Oh, no, I can't do that. It just sort of happened. That's how we think of meditation. It's very superficial. It's very childish, in fact, an experience, for God's sake. It's training. This is training. They use the word mind training, you know. It's serious mental training, using logic to argue with ego's absurd misconceptions, which are the barriers that we have constructed between self and other that are totally artificial. So that's why these meditations on love and compassion, don't think that it's gooey feelings. This is like ridiculous. They're intense, I tell you. So, okay, equanimity, such that when you've accomplished it, is this heartfelt recognition that friend, enemy, and stranger are equal to each other from one point of view. A heartfelt recognition when you've got it, an experiential recognition of the truth that a person whom you adore, whom you're attached to, whom you have attachment for, your beloved child, your beloved boyfriend, your beloved pussycat, whom you have attachment for, we label that person friend. And the person you can label enemy, we mightn't say that, but it's the person whom we have aversion for. So attachment by definition is for a person who fulfills my needs in the most kind of like self-centered way. You know, if a person smiles at me and says what I want and does what I want, and I mean, that can be a nice person too, but the attachment part of me is getting what it wants. That means my attachment sees that person as divine, as gorgeous. So that's what we label friend here. Friend, enemy, stranger here are in relation to the three delusions that drive them. So friend here is specifically the label for a person I have attachment for, whose delicious qualities I exaggerate. That's friend. Now we have enemy, the person whom I have aversion for, who is usually a person who intentionally or proactively doesn't do what my attachment wants, or has politics that my attachment doesn't agree with, or is a kind of a wacko or a psychopath or a pedophile that I read about, whatever, who doesn't fit my view, you know, excuse me, we call that person enemy, object of aversion. Then the third person, called a stranger, is a person who has neither helped me nor harmed me, so therefore about whom I feel completely indifferent. So, okay, we've got the three root delusions, haven't we? We learned back in high school. The three poisons: attachment for the objects that satisfy our needs, so we over-exaggerate their deliciousness. But in this section here, we're specifically dealing with sentient beings, not the cakes and the handbags. It's sentient beings whom we have attachment for as a friend. So for that person, how do we feel? We also happen to have love and compassion for that person. That's usually our love and compassion is confined to that person pretty much. We do have love and compassion, there's no question, but usually only for that person, and is contingent upon their fulfilling my attachment's needs. It all sounds very brutal, this analysis, but when we do it and observe it, we will agree with it. And it's very spontaneous. Even a person in a shop whom you walk in and you see the person for the first time, they're called a stranger, isn't it? And then the next second they beam at you, and they're genuinely kind people. And there's nothing wrong with them. But suddenly your attachment gets what it wants, and then immediately the assumption arises, wow, I must be a nice person. And then immediately you adore this person. Immediately you think they're lovely. Now, you didn't see them give a dagger look to this person before me and criticize them and they're a racist. You didn't see that, and you don't care. They smiled at me. So we have love and compassion, but only usually for this group. As we say in our culture, it's got strings attached. Or as Lama Zopa says, the love and compassion we do have, which is true love and compassion, is unstable because it's contingent upon attachment getting what it wants. This is analysis we need to do, then we'll understand it. We understand this very well. I mean, look at all the people who get divorced, hate each other after 6 weeks or 2 years or 20 years. Why? Because attachment stopped getting what it wanted. That's a friend. In this context, it's related to the delusion. It doesn't say the person's not a nice person. This is not discussing the person. They could be a saint. Doesn't matter. That's not the issue here. Now, the next one is the person, the enemy, who is proactively doesn't do or doesn't think what my attachment thinks. So we see them we see them through the lens of aversion. They appear awful. They're distant from us. And we do not automatically have love and compassion for them. In fact, it's the opposite. If you're not controlling yourself, you actually have to struggle to not want them. You have to struggle to not want them, to be unhappy or to be glad, especially if it's your ex-boyfriend and you're glad when the next girlfriend gives him up. I mean, we know these thoughts, you know, they're all rooted in attachment. So the enemy is a person who doesn't do what my attachment wants, who appears ugly to us, who is distant. The third category, which is 99.9999% of the universe, let's face it, that's called a stranger. And by definition, a stranger is a person who has neither helped nor harmed me. So that person in the shop, the first second I walk in, they're a stranger. Then suddenly, on the basis of one smile, they jump from the stranger category, don't they, to the friend category. We know that. Or if they look daggers at me, they'll suddenly jump from the stranger to the enemy category. We know this. It's instantaneous. We're doing this automatic analysis every day on the street, in the bus, in the television. We're analyzing, we're putting all sentient beings into these three categories. So the rats and the cockroaches go into the enemy category. The poodle, if it's your poodle, goes into the friend category. And some boring little kind of quiet little ant over in the corner is probably in the stranger category. It's automatic. Because why? Because we're driven by the three poisons. This is Buddha's analysis of the mind of all sentient beings. Buddhist psychology does not refer just to humans. It is an analysis of all sentient beings in the universe. It's very fascinating. So our point here is not to have love and compassion for them yet. That comes 14 steps later, or 6 steps, literally. The first step, the foundation of the basis, the foundation we have to develop as a solid ground upon which we can now start to grow love, compassion, great compassion, finally, bodhicitta. It's the foundation, the starting point. And why is that? Logically. What we're trying to cultivate is love and compassion for all sentient beings. For all sentient beings. So right now, the logic of ego, which of course is not logic at all, is I definitely want you to be happy and I definitely don't want you to suffer. And that who are we talking to? The beloveds. And as long as that boyfriend fulfills my needs and continues to be nice and loving and kind and patient and give me things, I will naturally continue to love and have compassion. And indeed, my love and compassion will even grow. But as soon as he starts not doing what my attachment wants, starts looking at someone else instead of me, starts being mean, starts paying less attention, my attachment is thwarted, I become hurt, I become upset, I become angry, I become lonely. All of these are really real human experiences. And so my love diminishes. It becomes less and less until eventually I chuck him out or he chucks me out. And now he's in the enemy category. So the basis at the moment for developing love and compassion, it's contingent upon a person doing what I want. That's the qualification for me to love you and compassion. You deserve my love and compassion when you do what I want. That's basically it. As cruel as that sounds, but analyze our lives, do the analysis of all sentient beings, you're going to see it's true. So that's faulty. It's too narrow. It's only a miniature number of people, and it changes from moment to moment. Because 10 minutes later, that boyfriend can be in the enemy category within, before you even know it. So the love and compassion here is simply, once I've established equanimity, I can eventually move to see, I can see with equanimity that actually, this is what equanimity is, and these are the different techniques you're using. All the words I'm saying here are different logics we use, and we do our own thinking, either formally in meditation or in day-to-day life, either way. when you've got equanimity, it's the recognition that yes, there are people who are kind to me, and yes, there are people who are mean to me, and yes, there are people who do neither, but that's not the issue. That doesn't become the basis for my wanting them to be happy and wanting them not to suffer, which is the basis now. The basis for my wanting you to be happy isn't, oh, as long as you make me happy. No, it's because you want to be happy. You want not to suffer. That is where they're equal. That's what we're trying to establish in equanimity. In other words, you've got to get yourself out of the equation. So even as we're talking, think of 3 people right now, 3 sentient beings. One to the left in front of you is your beloved, if we have any beloveds right now, your child, your sweet new girlfriend, your mother. Some people adore their mums, and have attachment, or your poodle, I don't care, whatever it is. In front of you, eyeball to eyeball, a person who doesn't do what you want. Everybody has one of them at any given time, or if not more. Objective aversion. Even could be the next door neighbor who just annoys you. It could be the girl at work who annoys you. It could be your brutal ex-husband whom you hate. It could be your horrible poor mother whom you've hated for 47 years. And then the stranger, have anybody whose face you know just enough, like even a person on this screen whom you've never met, who is still a stranger for you, in other words, who's neither harmed nor helped you yet. So they're quite distant. They're quite remote from you, aren't they? That's a stranger. So put that person's face there. So now this is the point about equanimity. Or this is all part of the logic we have to use to break down these absurd misconceptions. Because this is the part that we ought to, I always say we should be embarrassed at how self-centered we naturally are. We judge every person in the universe solely on the basis of whether or not they are good to me, kind to me. It's totally necessarily self-centered. And of course, we consider that totally normal in our ordinary culture, and we would assume anything opposite to that is abnormal. You'd be kind of weird. We know there are people who are loving and kind to strangers. We adore them. We write stories in the newspapers about them. We love them, but we don't understand how to get there. We just think they're exceptional, They're just different, we think. But this is the point. Buddha's saying it's possible for all of us. We have to use logic, that's all. Because egos use are very entrenched and very, very entrenched, so primordially entrenched that we don't even hear them as concepts. We just assume they're truth, This is how deep these misconceptions are. So we have to argue with them. We have to argue with them. So equanimity 1. So for example, I always use one example of how use an analysis of, say, to try and show the logic of equanimity. Let's say, where is somebody here? My boyfriend. Let's say, I don't know, where's the boyfriend? Wolfgang, is he there? I thought he was there before. Wolfgang, he's maybe gone. He might be there still. There he is. So let's say Wolfgang's my boyfriend. I know Wolfgang, so I can tell you. So let's just forget that. Doesn't matter. Let's just pretend I don't know Wolfgang. Let's say he's Lars's friend. And Lars is telling me about how, I always use the same example, how poor old Wolfgang, he's the bloke that lives down number 7, how he gets migraines. And I've never heard of Wolfgang. I know the bloke at number 7. I've seen him on the bus or something, it's vague for me. Let's say. That's a stranger, isn't it? And Lars is my friend, and he's telling me about his friend Wolfgang. And I try to have compassion, don't I? Because I've heard about it. And we do this. We read the papers, we read the news, we read about the guns and the things. And we do have compassion, but half the time we also have anger onto it. That's a different discussion. But let's just say this person, it's hard for me to have compassion for too long because I don't know Wolfgang. It's very simple. He's distant from me. He is a stranger, meaning he is a human being who has neither harmed nor helped me. Therefore, naturally, given ego grasping and given attachment, he's remote from me. I can't see him very clearly. I kind of vaguely look, you kind of vaguely look and you keep looking because he's a stranger. Nothing galvanizes. He doesn't grab me because he's a stranger. Meaning, specifically, it's a self-centered a label that I put on upon him because he, Wolfgang, has neither helped nor harmed me so far. So therefore, I naturally feel indifferent towards him. Again, like I said, we should be embarrassed, but this is the logic of the universe. We don't question it. That's a stranger. I try to have compassion. Then in 30 seconds, we start talking about each other again, to me and Lars, and I've forgotten all about Wolfgang. Now I meet Wolfgang. He introduces me. And then suddenly we fall in love and he moves me into number 7. Where is now he in my categorization? He's suddenly gone, he's moved out of stranger category and he's very much ensconced in the friend category, has he not? And now think about my mind. I can't stop thinking about Wolfgang. That's a sign of attachment, isn't it? But I think I'm so kind and loving and I spend money on doctors, and Rabina's so compassionate to Wolfgang. She takes care of him. She's up at 3 a.m, helping him, taking him to the hospital. Oh, she's so generous and compassionate. Isn't it? What's changed? What's changed is the point here. From Wolfgang's point of view, nothing has changed as far as his headaches are concerned. But I'll just finish the little story, then we'll do the analysis. Now, after a while, he gets fed up with me and starts, I start getting fed up because he moans and complains about his damned old headaches all the time. And my compassion and love, they ground to a halt, don't they? Because my attachment's fed up with him. So I chuck him out. And now where is he? He's moved into the other house called the enemy category. That Wolfgang, he never stops thinking about himself and his boring old headaches. I hope he gets more headaches. I mean, we know this. We live in this analysis every day with people on the newspapers and our friends and our own. I mean, this is just one person. We do this all the time with everybody. And the driving point is me. I mean, and the more we think about it, the more we should be embarrassed to admit to this. But it's normal, universal behavior. Dogs and ants and monkeys do it as well, because we're all driven by the 3 poisons. So the point is this, the conclusion, this is the point of this. The conclusion is this. You ask Wolfgang when he's my stranger, tell us about your headaches. He will tell you they are unbearable. Now you interview him when he's my beloved, and he will answer in exactly the same way. And then you interview him when I can't stand the sight of him. He will answer in exactly the same way. So take me out of the equation. What you have is 3 human beings, one I consider an enemy, one I consider a friend, and one I consider a stranger, who equally do not want to suffer and equally only want to be happy. That's the one objective truth there. This is not arguing that he's not a creep or not a beloved. This is not the discussion. It's a very specific point that the way we label beings now into these 3 categories through the lenses of attachment, aversion, and ignorance are faulty. They paint a wrong picture and they become the basis of my loving or not loving somebody. Totally faulty, totally self-centered. So what I'm trying to prove is that enemy, in this case, pretend it's, Wolfgang, stranger happens to be Wolfgang, friend, equal. They only want to be happy and they only don't want to suffer. This is what we're trying to prove with equanimity. But there are many things that freak us out about that because we have so many wrong assumptions. So when he's my beloved, I can understand that love and compassion. I have it because he's doing what I want. He's kind to me. He's loving to me. He thinks he's so grateful to me. He looks lovely in my eyes and he thinks I'm gorgeous. So I'm happy to have this love and compassion. But when he becomes my enemy and he starts being mean and wanting more money from me and all those kind of things, so I throw him out. And someone says, oh, poor Wolfgang and his headaches. Oh, yeah, but you got no idea. He deserves me. So self-centered. And I'll give all the logical arguments why he doesn't deserve my love and happiness. So in other words, it's totally self-centered. It's totally I-based, totally I-based. And this is the point of this equanimity. It has got 0 to do with whether Wolfgang is a psychopath or a saint. That's not the discussion here, but that's the discussion for us. Because when we hear, let's say you think of a pedophile, forget Wolfgang. You think of a pedophile, you read about a pedophile, and we have a panic attack when we read about a pedophile, And then you're trying to do equanimity. And then you think in your heart, well, he wants to be happy. He only wants to be happy. He only doesn't want to suffer. We can't even hear that thought properly because we think it sounds like you're saying, oh, well, the poor thing, he can't help it. And he kind of gets off the hook. We can't hear the simple bare thought, he's equal to the beloved person who also wants to be happy. Or he's equal to the kind person. We can't hear that. So we've got so much thinking analysis to do to even get to be hearing it properly. Because the first thing we will say, like when you tell me that Wolfgang wants to be happy, and now he's by this point, I'm fed up with him and he's my enemy. And the first thing I will say is, what do you mean he wants to be happy? You can't imagine how selfish he is. He doesn't deserve me to love him. So we, in other words, it's just proof of the pudding. Our delight in someone's happiness is contingent upon their deserving my love, which is, may you be happy. So it's totally self-centered. They don't deserve it, we will say, means they don't make me happy. And that's the point. Even let's say Wolfgang, let's say he left his past girlfriend for me. When I'm in love with him, I might hear about how mean he was to the last girlfriend. I don't care. I think she's stupid as well. I don't care because he's kind to me now. So it proves we are so self-centered. We're so greedily self-centered. I don't care if he's mean to his last girlfriend. He's nice to me. So even though she would say, what do you mean Wolfgang wants to be happy? Look what he did to me. I don't care. So everything we look at, everything we think, everything we see in the natural way we respond, and we need to unpack all this to hear this thought process. This is being your own therapist, people. We've got to do this analysis and have the courage to own these states of mind, own these thoughts, own these assumptions, and then argue with them. So in the first level of practice, we're playing safe and seeing the fault of attachment and how ridiculous it is in relation to the cake and the handbag and the boyfriend, and you're trying to just kind of steady yourself. Here, it's more proactively, we're trying to break down these assumptions, and the key goal here is so that we can get closer to sentient beings. We can break down the barriers that ego has constructed between me and sentient beings. So the first second levels of practice are like cautious. You back off and be cautious. Here, you're more courageous, and you continue to work on your mind. That never changes, but the reference point is different. The goal is different. We're trying to lessen, the goal is different. We're trying to head towards this bodhicitta, So far, so good. I'd like you now to ask me some questions, please. Another 30 minutes of me raving on. Come on, ask me some questions on just this point specifically of the beginnings of this equanimity. Yes, Lorraine.
Thank you. I have a frenemy, I guess you'd call it. I'm just kind of trying to deal with how to respond to her, because she's been very two-faced and telling me she loves me and sending me gifts and things like that. And on the other hand, she's gossiped about me and thinks that I don't know. And every time she contacts me, she knows that I know what she's been doing, but she says she has major health issues. At this point, I think she should have been dead for 10 years based on what she's been saying. But I'm just trying to figure out how to approach.
Okay, so this is wisdom wing work, Lorraine. This is way back to wisdom wing, darling. Let's put it in reference point. Let's put it in context. This is wisdom wing. This is wisdom wing. This is not compassion wing. This is wisdom wing. So that means learning to know first to control our own body and speech. So the very first level of your practice is to be very careful what you say to this person for your own sake, Petal. This is the very first level. You be very skillful about what you say, because you can see, and this is human beings. And this is where we get to the next level of practice, where you start to know your own mind. When you start to see your mind, Lorraine, and you know, and you just pointed out very clearly certain characteristics in this particular person, and every one of us knows what you're talking about. Every single person in this room exactly identifies what you're saying. A person who's says one thing and does another. So then the point is, if you don't know your mind, Lorraine, if you don't know how your attachment works, and you don't identify exactly when you see the things that she does, you recognize, I do those things too. I understand those qualities too. If you haven't done that work, then you don't understand this person. And this is the wisdom wing. So when you first control your body and your speech, and now you look into your own mind, you're observing these things, and you're probably correct. So then you've got to look into what it is in you that prevents you from now thinking, this is ridiculous. I do not want a person in my life like this. Thank you very much, but goodbye. That's the wisdom wing work, Lorraine.
Thank you.
You with me? You with me, darling? What's the point? Compassion is given that she's like this. Then how can you get to see how you can learn to love her and have compassion? Which implies the work of the wisdom wing first. That you're really together. You understand this person because you know why. Because you understand your own mind, Lorraine. Because the fact of the wisdom wing is everything you see in someone else, you have to recognize it in you. Do you get my point when I say that?
Yes.
Or not?
Thank you.
You get my point, darling?
Yes.
So you have to have the wisdom now to say, just don't have to tell her anything. Don't discuss anything with her. You protect yourself. You don't open your mouth one time. You just stop having a relationship with her. Or you recognize she's like this and you take her with a grain of salt. That's the wisdom wing, honey. That's for self-respect.
Basically what I've been doing. So I guess
Good.
I'm
That's the way, darling. But this is the wisdom wing and not compassion. Compassion's a more radical one. Given that she is like this, given that you're going to give her distance, you know, how can I learn to understand her and learn to realize that she's the one who's suffering and I want to benefit her as well? That comes later. Do you understand my point, darling?
I do have compassion for her because I know a lot of things she's been through, and you know.
No, that's not what I'm discussing. I don't care about what she's been through. That's a typical Western view, or someone does this because they've had a hard life. No. She's doing this because she's got attachment and aversion and jealousy and resentment and neediness to be loved. This is knowing the mind, Lorraine. We suffer because of our mind.
Thank you.
She suffers because she's got attachment. She wants to be approved of. She gets jealous. She gets resentful. She's got no stability in her mind. Join the universe, baby. You get my point?
Yes, thank you.
Good, Lorraine. Thanks, darling. Yes, who's next?
Was Ariella?
She just went away. Her hand went
Yeah.
away. Okay, who else has got questions?
Because you answered my question
Oh, well done, that happens.
about it's okay to leave at the moment the
Of course it is.
people that
Well, of course it is.
we can't handle yet because
Absolutely.
we're not.
And you do not have to explain anything. It's your decision. Let them think what they like.
So it's
Exactly.
okay.
Absolutely.
And by the time we get.
The wisdom wing, Ariella, is learning to be wise and skillful and to protect yourself from danger.
And
that's the
going and from not practicing the path, because at the moment I still feel the people that are difficult in my life, I feel they're obstacles, and then I get frustrated by not generating compassion, by not, you know, it takes me back. So now that you said that it's okay to put them aside, as long as while we're still in the wisdom wing.
The reason has to be because you know that it's like if you're an alcoholic, you've got to give up being around alcoholics, don't you? Not out of anger towards alcoholics, but because it's no good for your mind right now. You're not strong enough.
Thank you. I thought it was running away from.
Darling, running away is the most intelligent thing you can do, but for the right reason. Very sensible.
Thank you.
Okay. What else, people? About equanimity. Any questions about what I said about equanimity, please? This is my point here today. About equanimity, please. I need questions about equanimity so I can see you understand equanimity. No questions. Okay. All right. Yes, Rosalind. Yes, Ros, darling, talk to me.
So I often feel there's a difference between what my head gets and
you're unmuted. That's good. Talk to me.
I
Rose.
often feel there's a difference between what my head gets and what my heart gets. So
we'll start with the head first. Heart comes later. What do you understand intellectually?
Well, what you're saying makes complete sense. But what do you do with the feelings of aversion? You know,
well, give an example. Give an example, a simple example.
Well, a simple example is a neighbour that has been troublesome for me.
I understand. So you have aversion to this person.
Yeah.
This application of equanimity is a perfect antidote. So the point is, feelings are like when the thoughts are very strong, they then get entrenched and we feel them in our body and they're automatic. You can't expect them to go overnight, darling. Yeah. So you've got to start with the intellectual understanding. And then the more you practice the intellectual understanding, that slowly replaces the angry feelings. Right. It takes time though. So accept the feelings. You have aversion for this person, you know, but intellectually you understand how they are just like everybody else. And this is why, if you've done the wisdom wing, like I said to Lorraine, then you understand your own attachment, you understand your anger, you understand your own meanness, you understand why you do things to harm others. You understand my point, Roz? When you know that from the wisdom wing, then you can easily understand this person. You know exactly what anger feels like. You know what you know what self-centeredness feels like. You know what people who are mean feel like. You've got to first know it yourself. That's the wisdom wing. Then on the basis of that, you can easily understand this person. And then you look at the aversion, but you don't exercise it. You don't act it out. You don't believe that's the story. You try to get past your label of aversion, and you get to have this recognize that he wants to be happy just like everybody else. So let's say a typical example would be, let's say you're a grandma or a mother or something. I don't know how old you are, but never pretend you're a grandma. I don't know how old you are. It doesn't matter. And your divine little grandchild. I mean, we all adore our little grandchild. And then he's playing with a smelly little kid next door whom you can't stand. So a simple example, when you've got a friend and an enemy in front of you, then you naturally want to protect your little beloved grandchild, and you want to slap the other kid because you can't stand him, you know? That's natural. That's how we are, enemy and friend. So the exercise, the application of equanimity, you just shut up, Roz, back off, observe them playing, and recognize that these two little children are equal in their wish. They only want to be happy, and they only don't want to suffer. This is not looking at whether they're divine or ugly. It's not even looking at whether the kid is mean or not. It's simply looking deeper and recognizing they're both driven by the wish to be happy and driven by the wish not to suffer. And that begins to prevail. And then this gradually then grows through the other techniques into love and compassion eventually. It's the starting point though. Recognize that fact. Still recognize your aversion, still recognize your attachment, but don't believe in their stories. Do you understand my point, Rose?
Yeah, and getting it with the head will filter down into the feeling.
Precisely, darling. Like anything has to start with a theory, doesn't it? You can't get the music theory, perfect feeling of that Bach music you're playing. It's totally boring initially because it's really strained. You've got to start with a theory, and then practice is gradually those thoughts trickle from the head to the heart. We've got to give it time, darling.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Yes, Christine.
Good morning, Venerable Ravina. My question to you is, for me personally, I'm having difficulty applying equanimity in some of the more relationship roles that are expected to be appropriate within Western society. So, like,
I'm
for
a bit
example,
confused, darling. I think best if you give me a simple example, if you don't mind.
I am having difficulty having equanimity for my son, where I feel aversion. I'm having difficulty having equanimity and loving kindness for my mother-in-law, where I have an extremely strong aversion.
Okay, so what we're not, before you go further, I hear now, we're not discussing love and compassion yet. We're discussing the very first precise view that's labeled equanimity, that is a bare bones recognition that your son and your mother, whom you have aversion for, you know, are equal to somebody you might have you might adore, that underneath all that drama, underneath the friend who you think is gorgeous and a lovely person, underneath your mother and her neuroses and her misery, underneath that, they both are, it's a very precise, narrow point. They're both driven by the yearning to be happy and the yearning to not suffer. It's a very miniature, precise point, sweetheart, that is the basis of then gradually growing love, compassion, great compassion. So really, in a sense, it's back, like Lorraine's point, it's back to the wisdom wing. You've got to be looking at your mind, observing your aversion, your attachment, and see how you can learn to understand your mother. This is understand your son, understand your mother from understanding your own mind. So then you have to have a relationship with both of them. You have to have that. You can't just cut them off if you can't.
Oh, no, I can. It's just it's difficult because, as you know, in Western society, there's those pressures. And so if you are cutting off your adult child, or if you're cutting off your mother-in-law, then there's
I understand that, but the other point would be for you to check up. So first of all, my first question to you, this is the wisdom wing. Are you capable, are you able to behave appropriately with each of them to protect you from being overwhelmed by them? Are you able to protect yourself in their presence? Or do you get overwhelmed by their presence and they dominate your life and you become crazy, or what?
They definitely overwhelm, and I feel like it's dominating. And so I think
And your
space
son
is
lives
good.
with you, or what relationship do you
No,
have with your
he's
son?
independent living on his own.
And how often do you see him?
About 3 times a year. And
Why it's only 3 times a year, then why have you got a problem? That's very few times in 12 months. So you don't really have a problem with your son. You already don't see him.
I guess there's just the I feel like there's an expectation to have interaction
I
via
know
phone
that, but
calls
I'm
or
not
text
discussing other
messages.
people's expectation.
Right.
I'm asking you what you want and what you think. So what do you think's best for you? If you can't handle your son, what do you think is best? I mean, you only see him 3 times a year, for 1 day, for 1 month, for an hour, or what?
Usually about 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And the honest answer is I need a timeout.
Okay, then you have to decide yourself. This is the wisdom wing, to have the courage to not be driven by what other people expect of you. You have to know where you're at and what you can cope with. And if you feel you can't cope with the presence of your son, then you stop seeing him. I mean, that's your decision, Christine. I'm sorry. Then the same with your mother-in-law. It's up to what you can handle. And then if you do decide that you're going to put up with seeing your son 3 times a year, or your mother-in-law, whenever, this is where you can try and then have some compassion and control your body, control your speech when you're there, and how often you see them, you try and be as kind as you can, and then you leave it. So it's up to what you are capable of, Christine. You're in charge of your own life. I'm not interested in following what other people expect. That's how we're suffering. You have to decide what you think you can cope with on your own path of developing yourself. That's the answer, sweetheart.
That was extremely helpful. Thank you very
Good.
much, Venerable.
Thank you, Christine, darling. Yes, Lorraine.
Yes, thank you. So I have a recurring pattern that's been going on in my life for a long time, because I never had any problem having compassion for everyone equally. But I also have this issue where I'm trying to find the fine line between where that gets into attachment for being there for people. I'm
This
trying
is
to.
back to the wisdom wing, Lorraine. This is back to the wisdom wing again. Same thing, darling. The work we have to do on our own mind, the major job back in the middle scope, in the high school level, when you start to look at your mind, you've got to distinguish between attachment and love. They are utterly and completely and totally different. So when and this is the work in the wisdom wing, Lorraine, well before the compassion wing. Love, attachment is, and especially the attachment you're describing, is the craving to be seen as a good girl. That completely destroys us. And this is exactly what Christine's saying. We're driven by this, what we think people think of us, and then that we mix that with then trying to be a nice girl, and then we wonder why we get trodden on and treated like a doormat, because our compassion is based on attachment. Don't give up the compassion, but just make it more sturdy and more clear, and be able to say no sometimes. But the driving one is the your craving to be seen as a good girl. Everyone's got it, Lorraine. Join the universe.
Thank you.
Do you understand?
Yes, I'm just always trying to find that fine line in my own mind where I can
It's
say.
it's not a fine line. It's a massively big line when we can distinguish between attachment and love. They're massively, totally different states of mind. And that's the work in the wisdom wing, darling. So more work to do internally, you know. That's the well before we can get to the compassion wing. This is this is the fundamental job we all have to do. Know our own minds deeply and well.
Yeah, I feel like I've got a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Absolutely, darling. Join the universe, honey. It's okay. Keep moving. Hello, Stina. Who is that? Yes, hello.
Hello, Venerable.
Hello.
I'm not sure if I want to ask the same question now that Lorraine just asked. Possibly. How do I phrase this? But both in my work and privately, I like helping people. And this is not a problem, because this is the job I do as well. And this is just something to me that I don't really think about. It's just you try to do what is best for people so they will feel better. But I don't all the time, or most of the time. I mean, I meet people who face a lot of suffering. They are suffering a lot. I mean, by circumstances. And I don't feel this so much.
Don't feel what, darling? Don't feel what?
A very strong empathy, a very strong compassion. I mean,
see.
I do what I'm supposed to do anyway, but
I understand.
I don't take it to heart all the time.
Yes,
Sometimes
yes.
it's just like, yeah, of course, to do this to help them that way, but
Yes.
it's not.
So what's the point? What's the main point then?
I'm not sure. It's more
I mean,
like
you're telling
I
me
feel
that
it's,
you have a job. So you're telling me that you have a job that involves helping people, and that you like to help people.
maybe my main point is how important is it to do things? Yeah, of course it is. We talk about intention all the time.
Go on.
How do I find compassion? I mean, is it? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting stuck in my mind.
Don't worry, just say the thoughts. Don't you worry, just say it. Say what you feel.
Is it a big problem that I don't feel a big empathy for you?
I
don't feel aversion in any way.
Sweetheart, no, this is the point that we mentioned before. It was, who was it before who said it? There's one, we can understand things theoretically. Then two is the feeling. That comes later, Stina. It's like anything you learn. You start with a theory. You can't possibly sit and play Bach music with incredible feeling from day one. It's really intellectually exhausting. You're squeezing your brain with all these boring theories. You can't feel any music. But as you learn the theories, as you internalize the theories, slowly the feeling comes. This is logical. It's exactly the same with feeling empathy, feeling compassion. At least you have a tendency to want to help others instead of wanting to harm them. That's pretty amazing. But then just recognize also, maybe, like I said before to both Lorraine and Christine, observe, maybe it's automatic in you to do that, and that's good. But try and observe also, sometimes maybe you find it hard not to help. Do you find it hard? Do you like to be seen as a good person and you're fearful of not helping? Or do you feel bad because you don't feel the compassion? But the compassion will come eventually is what I'm really saying here. That's the main point, Stina. It will come eventually if you do these types of practices where you're looking into your mind more deeply and you're unpacking and unraveling all the neurotic tendencies that are in there that are limiting our compassion. So, I mean, do you have a tendency to always want to do the right thing and be a good person, or do you, or you find it hard to say no? I mean, what is your tendency?
I think it's not so much that I want people to see that I do good things for people. That's not the point. It's just, it's disappointing for myself when I'm not able to help people. It feels good for myself. I mean,
it's wonderful.
Not the way I'm being viewed by others. Just
no, well, that's good. I remember when I first listened to all these teachings at the very beginning, and I found it really overwhelming because they're so advanced. And I thought, I can't imagine having these levels of love and compassion. And then I remember the Dalai Lama saying, and it really helped my mind, if you want to help others, practice compassion. If you want to help yourself, practice compassion. So be delighted. Feel good, rejoice when you are able to be compassionate. This has helped nurturing and growing you as a person. Don't discount that. That's wonderful. But compassion, the feeling and empathy will come as we keep practicing. It's wonderful. Good. Understand? Good.
I'm somewhat understanding at least.
Okay, good.
There. Thank you.
Keep moving. Thank you, Stina. What else, people?
Christine?
Venerable, if I may ask one more question.
Yes, darling.
Is there, within the teachings, within the Dharma, is there something that in the West, what we refer to as compassion fatigue, where you're trying to constantly be in that state of compassion?
Suffer because of attachment, darling. It's not because of compassion. Yeah, the Western view is we suffer because we get exhausted from compassion. No, not the Buddhist view. This is the wisdom wing again. We suffer because we have attachment and neediness to be seen a good girl, afraid to say no, afraid of upsetting people, afraid of not being liked. They are the things that cause us suffering, not compassion. Compassion and love and kindness cannot cause us suffering.
Thank you, Venerable.
Mind. Do you understand me?
Yes, Venerable. Thank you.
Good. Thanks. Let's just say more about this. Just keep talking about this equanimity. Oh, yes. Okay, Linda. Talk to me, darling.
I think thank you. This might be a strange question, but I realize I think I have an aversion to suffering itself. So how do I untangle that from just wanting others to not
I
suffer.
mean, your own suffering or someone else's?
Someone else's, well, probably all of it.
No, I understand, darling. This is huge, huge, huge. And again, this gets back to the wisdom wing. This gets back to when we start to do the deep analysis of our own mind, most precisely learning to identify the delusions, in particular attachment, the primordial emotional hunger, neediness for everything to be lovely. Attachment is the main cause of our suffering. This is the point now. So attachment, and this is the wisdom work, this is not compassion wing. So that means what drives us, Buddha's telling us that attachment effectively is the main cause of all, because we don't do that analysis, not in the way we think in the world. So this attachment is this underpinning of all the other neuroses. It's this constant emotional hunger. And mainly you could say its energy is it only wants everything, listen to this point, it only wants everything to be lovely. Attachment can't cope with any problem whatsoever. So the second attachment doesn't get what it wants, it can be the tiniest thing. You stub your, don't we? Because suddenly aversion arises, we get upset because our poor little toe hurt, meaning our attachment just got upset. Attachment is this junkie in us. So of course, with lots of attachment that is only wanting everything to be lovely, when you look outside in the world and you see lots of suffering, one, you will have compassion, which is amazing, but mainly it's polluted by the attachment really getting upset. Can't stand seeing problems. Suffer. Are you hearing me, sweetheart? Do you get that point?
Yes. I don't know.
Do you hear that point?
I do. I don't know what to do with it, except I guess
well,
just
honey,
being aware.
Attachment is the emotional hunger that only wants everything to be lovely, that only wants everything to be the way Linda wants it. I mean, if you ever had, this is a man next to you, Dave, I bet you're not a saint. Therefore, I bet you when he slurps his coffee too loud, you get aversion. When he snores at night, you get aversion. When the traffic light is red instead of green, you get aversion. Honey child, join the universe. So what do you do with that? You analyze it and you think, give it a break. Dave is allowed to slurp his coffee. This is my problem because my attachment only wants lovely sounds. Attachment is a baby inside us that only wants everything to be lovely. It's embarrassing to think that it is. This is what drives the universe, Linda. Are we communicating?
Yes.
So
yes.
honey, first one is at least control your mouth. Don't say anything. That's a good step. Then you start to work on the attachment and you learn to, and then how you work on attachment and how you work on aversion in an example like that, you learn to greet his slurping coffee. You learn to interpret the slurping sound differently. That's how you learn not to want to kill Dave. It's called practicing patience.
Thank you.
Are you with me?
Yep.
So don't chuck out the compassion when you see suffering. Just recognize you don't suffer because of compassion. You suffer because your little baby attachment in there, join the universe, can't stand problems. Can you get that point? Good.
That's a big one.
Good, massive. Of course it is. Yes. Who else? So let's just talk more about equanimity. I'll keep talking about it. So again, equanimity is a precise, specific, narrow, but massive when you get it, starting point that upon which we now will begin next week to do, you keep going step by step in these types of very precise analyses until eventually we culminate with this bodhicitta. So intellectually we can understand these quite quickly, but if you wanted to go off into retreat and actually experience these eventually, you could be there for 5 years, 10 years, 20. But the process of turning your mind into these concepts experientially is another whole discussion. We don't like looking at ego's voices, you know? Is trying to get equanimity. She can have in the enemy category because she can put her son. In the friend category, maybe she's got a person whom she adores. She puts her friend in that category in front of her. The enemy will be her son or her mother-in-law in the middle category. And then to the right, she can put a person who's a stranger. And then what she does, like what we do, is we step out of the equation, try to step out of the equation, try to see these three people objectively, not through the lenses. Because using this analysis, why Linda or anybody else, not Linda, in this case it was Christine, but any one of us is the same. She sees at the moment, she's not getting what it wants. He doesn't behave the way her attachment wants. So she has aversion for him because he exhausts her. He behaves badly, he's demanding, he's self-centered. So she gets a human. So this compassion level, you get three of them separately, the equation, and you attempt to recognize bare bones very simply that your beloved to the left in front of you, your ugly old son in the front of you, whom you know so well and you can't see, stop seeing him in that way. And then the stranger, they're similar to each in this one point of view, that underneath all their rubbish, all their garbage, all their neuroses, all their kindness, they're each of them driven equally by this craving to be happy and a spontaneous craving to not suffer. It's such a precise point. And as that begins to grow with us, we can start to be more objective about these three people. This is the point here. Right now, we're too close to them, you know, and that's the way samsara is. So this demands a lot of work. Like I said, both Christine and Linda and the three of them, this is all, their questions are all wisdom wing questions. They're all like high school, how to deal with our mind. This is why the compassion wing is more advanced. So this is the point too. If we haven't done enough inner work, when you just can't cope with that son or that mother-in-law, you're so outraged, you're so upset, you're so distressed, means you haven't done enough work on your own mind. It's not being rude about us, we're all the same. Then you keep distant from them because you can't handle it, but you don't blame them. When you get to the compassion wing level, you'll be able to see them objectively. You're able to see past the rage, past the horrible person, and to recognize this deep drive that drives all of us. It's something quite specific, and it gradually shifts the logic for why you now want to gradually go through these stages and develop genuine love for each one and genuine compassion for each one, not because they do what I want, which is the logic of ego, but because they want it. This is the idea, you know. Yes, Ariella.
How can you not be upset when other people's deeds, suffering, eventually you pay?
Sorry, start again, darling. Start again.
I'm saying, how can eventually, when other people's deeds or bad deeds, eventually you suffer the consequences? I'll give just an example. You're giving your daughter, your husband, your boyfriend, your car. They drive recklessly, they wreck your car. Oh, sorry. And then you pay for it. You take a day off work.
This is back to the wisdom wing, Ariella. This is back to the wisdom wing, baby. This is not compassion wing at all. This is wisdom wing. So why are you suffering when they harm your car? Why are you suffering? What's the analysis that we've been discussing just here now in this room today? Try to remember. What is the reason you're suffering?
I want to say attachment.
That's right. You're correct, because your attachment doesn't want problems. This is brutal. It's too brutal for us. But if you don't understand,
not problems because he made me feel bad. I am paying for their,
Ariella, this is wisdom wing. This is back. We should go back to the first scope. This is to do with karma. If you don't have the view of, I'm only talking Buddhist analysis. You don't have to like Buddhist analysis, but I'm giving you the very brutal answers. The very first level of practice is to understand that everything we think and do, everything we experience is the fruit of our past actions. So if you really understand the view of karma, Ariella, and I'm not saying you should or even should want to, I'm just giving you the Buddhist answer, brutal as it sounds, then you would start to take responsibility and know that's the fruit of some past action you have created to harm them. And then you would take responsibility for it. And then you'll understand your suffering because of your attachment and your aversion. And then you'll get over that. And then eventually you can have compassion for them because they just created negative karma. This is the analysis, Ariella. We don't have to use it, but this is the Buddhist answer, as brutal as it is. So meanwhile, you do your best to deal with this. And then if you're brave enough, Ariella, you will make them pay for it. Did you do that? Or you just weakly said, no, I'll pay for it? Then that's because you're afraid of them disliking you. That's because of attachment, honey. Did you get them to pay for the damage? Huh?
No.
Oh,
No.
then you created your own problem. That's your mistake because you have attachment for them not to dislike you. Join the universe, Ariella.
Isn't that called revenge?
I beg your pardon.
To make them,
it's called wisdom. It's called
wisdom.
wisdom. If you think it is beneficial for them, if they weren't responsible and didn't take responsibility and they crashed the car, then it would be wise. Maybe that's up to you to have the wisdom to know what's best for them. You have to know that, not just do it. But if you're going to be resentful, you're the one who suffers.
Exactly.
So that's what the wisdom wing work is, darling. So do lots more work to do on your mind.
Yes.
Join the universe, honey. I keep saying it.
Thank
Good,
you.
darling. Time to go, people. So please think about equanimity, the meaning of it. I mean, not one of the questions has come out of a result of equanimity. All the questions have been wisdom wing, which shows we're not qualified, for this level of work. This is my whole point. You're proving the point. I'm not being rude to Christine or Ariella or anybody else, but it proves that the compassion wing is more advanced. It just proves the point. Your questions prove it. And this is what's hard to hear. So it's good. It's proof of the pudding. So please think about equanimity. Try to think about what I said. Read Venerable K's teachings and try and think about the meaning of equanimity. Try to get the precise meaning. And then we'll carry on from that next week. Thank you, darling people. Jangchub Semchog Rinpoche, Make Panam Keguchig, Kepanyampam, Mepayang, Gongne, Gondu, Pabashog. And we never give up, okay? Never, 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 never give up. Thank you, precious people. So much. So happy to see you all, darlings. Bye.